Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the support. We don't see anybody in chat, but I'm sure that will change very, very quickly. But yeah, before we do get started with today's episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast because we've got a brand new champion of the NBA. So,
Yep.
talk to me about it.
Yeah. So I mean, for pretty much the sixth, seventh straight year in a row, we've got a different NBA champion, right?
Yeah,
2019, the Raptors. 2020, the Lakers. Right. 2021, Bucks. 22 Warriors. 23 Nuggets, and now 2024, it's the Celtics. Right. Obviously, the Boston Celtics just clinched their 18th title, right? Most in NBA history. Over the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games. Jaylen Brown, shocker MVP. It's kind of funny because I think when we were recording our last episode, we thought it should be Jaylen Brown, but we did, but we thought that it could possibly be swayed by what happens in this game. But I think because Brown overall had a really good series, right? Like Tatum was good as well, but he had a couple of not so great shot making games. So that's probably what kind of put Brown over the top. I think, like the Homelander said, I think Jaylen Brown earned that one. I think he was pretty much I guess like the best player for the Celtics in the series, even though Tatum obviously also, played well at different spots as well. Like to me, it could have gone to him, it could have gone to Tatum, or it could have even gone to Holiday, and it wouldn't have really been a problem. But I think, Brown getting it, I don't really have an issue with. He played, very well, right? Obviously, if we look at his stats, over the course, of this series, right, he averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shot 44 from the field. So like I think those are pretty good numbers, right?
yeah, agreed. And I think he wholeheartedly deserves it. Celts easy breezy chip. I don't know about that. Like I do understand, people talking about, you know, cakewalk and stuff, but I think it's more so of a talent gap, where it's everybody's been talking about the injuries and stuff, but they played and beat a team that was pretty much fully healthy in the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals, and that's all that really matters. So, but yeah, I guess in retrospective, you could kind of talk about them having an easy breezy chip because
Yeah,
they made it look easy. I'll tell you that.
yeah, yeah. I think for most people, it's from the perspective of like the teams that they played. Like you said, they played a lot of teams that weren't 100%. Even though we both believe that they would have still probably come out of the East. Maybe they don't only lose 2 games on their way to the finals, but I think they still would have come out of the East. Obviously, the path was made easier by being able to avoid, say, like a Philly, or a Milwaukee or something like that. But also, that's why you win all the games in the regular season that you can. That's why you win 64 games and try to have as great of a regular season that you can, so that way that puts you in a better position to be able to make a deep playoff run. If you're the 1 seed, usually you're not going to play as many really good teams on the route to the title, anyways, right? Like you're going to start off playing an 8 seed, and then after that, right, you're going to be playing the 4 or the 5 seed. So, I mean, that and obviously 4 or 5 seeds can be fine. It just depends. But just in general, when you win that many games, like record wise, you're not normally going to be playing great teams. Xander Cade BS title. I mean, at the end of the day, they ended up winning, right? Because every team has to have some type of thing go their way. That's why there's been 6, 7 different title winners the last several years, right? Because all of those teams that won had to have something go their way, right, in order to give them the best possible outcome, right? Like obviously for the Celtics, yeah, they went through a lot of teams that weren't healthy, and the team that they went against in the finals wasn't the best team that they could have played against in the West, right? Like it wasn't Denver, it wasn't OKC, it wasn't Minnesota, right? It was Dallas, who was still really good, right? They were
Right.
a 5 seed, right? So that obviously doesn't shortchange how good they are. But we know, obviously, like in the West, there were a couple other teams that may have given the Celtics more of a challenge, but it doesn't matter, right? Like last year, right? The Nuggets beat an 8 seed in the final, right? Obviously, things could change if they played a different team. Right? The year before, right? It was Golden State, right? Obviously, they had to have things go their way as well, right? But they also played very well against the Celtics, which was a team that, I thought the Warriors were going to beat the Celtics, but there were a lot of people going into that finals that thought the Celtics were going to win, right?
Yeah.
Because of the way they played on both ends of the floor, right? The year before that, the Bucks, they had to have things go their way, right? They played the Nets, right? The Nets had injuries. The Suns getting to the finals. Teams in the West had injuries as well, right? The Lakers had the bubble. The Raptors obviously had probably the most luck go their way, considering that they played a Warriors team that didn't even have Durant for most of the series, and then Clay gets hurt. Um, but and then you can even go back to way, in previous years, right? Previous eras before that, right? So every team's got to have something go their way, and this year was the Celtics, right? But they were still talented enough that, like, if you went into the season and you're trying to kind of map out which teams have the best chance, I don't think, it would be kind of difficult to pick a bunch of teams before the Celtics because we knew going into the year that they were going to be really good. They were
Yeah.
actually, like I said, my preseason pick. But I'm, like I said, not taking a victory lap because I changed it. But I was higher on them than, say like the Bucks. And I also thought the Bucks, were going to be good. Um, but either way, the Celtics, right? They won 64 games during the regular season, and they only lost what 3 games during the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they were
Spectacular.
dominant over the course of the postseason. But I can understand the thought process of, you know, yeah, they didn't necessarily have to play their best in order to win. But to be fair, hey, Porzingis wasn't healthy, so let's say next year, because Keith Wells is saying Celtics should repeat in the East. I'm assuming you're
Absolutely.
you're just like coming out of the East, and
Absolutely.
representing the East finals again. Yeah, they should be the favorites. I think right now in Vegas, they're the favorites to win the title. Homelander says OKC 2025. We'll see. They have to make some moves, and they also need progression from a lot of their younger players.
Yeah.
If they want to win the title, right? They obviously had a great season, but I think they're going to have to do more. But
Yeah.
from the Celtics perspective, again, their young guys could also get better, right? Tatum and Brown could get better. Obviously, like I said, before I was reading the comments, Porzingis could be healthy, right? Because again, they didn't even really need him for against this team. But obviously, let's say they're back in the finals next season, and there's another team that comes out of the West. Um, they'll probably need it, right? Like you would need them against the Nuggets, you'd need them against Minnesota, any team with, like any team that has bigs that can somewhat punish you. And obviously Towns, is different, right? But he's still like a respectable offensive big, even though Gobert necessarily isn't. And then obviously the Nuggets have Jokic. So I think obviously the bigger question would be for the Mavs, right? Like what's the chances of them being able to come back into, get back to the finals next season? And I don't know, right? Because the issue is that the Western Conference has a lot of good teams.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily that the Mavs aren't good. It's just that your gauntlet to get out of the conference is going to be a lot more difficult than Boston. So, if you're the Mavs, like we know they're going to have to upgrade in order to, improve the roster. But even so, because of the upper end talent that they have, they should still be one of the top teams in the West, right? Like they should still probably be one of the best four teams, right? Because obviously you have your team's built around a guy who's only 25, so he can get better. And then obviously I'm sure they'll probably try to do something around the margins, even if it's not a significant move, right? Like they probably still need, some, I guess, I don't know, higher level two-way guys, right? Like obviously, again, their defense was really good over the course of the season, but you need a little bit more versatility, right? Like, not having like a capable stretch big kind of hurts, right? Because, against a team like Boston that has a ton of different guys that you have to switch on, not being able to have a guy that can stay in front as a big, that hurts. That guy technically, I guess, is Maxi Kleba, but he had a separated shoulder. So, obviously he could try to move on defense, but there's not much he could do there. And then on offense, he can't punish you at all. Mavs have peaked. It's possible. I mean, obviously they went to a finals. I think, again, I think a guy like Luca, I think he's good enough to be able to win you a title, but obviously not against the Celtics team. And I think he would need to also progress a little more as well, right? Like I think defensively he would need to be better. Um, but just in general, like it doesn't necessarily shortchange what the Mavs did. Like I said, I guess the biggest question is for them is it sustainable? And that's the problem. You have a top five player, so in theory, you should have a chance. But I don't necessarily know if they're going to be able to get out of it again, right? Because we know there's probably going to be some teams in the West that Dallas doesn't match up as well with. Um, and if they run into one of those teams, then it might be tougher. So we'll see. We'll have to see what they do in the offseason. And they actually have more flexibility than some of the other teams at the top because they're not a team that's in the second apron. So it's
Hmm.
not like, Phoenix or Minnesota or I think Denver if they bring back KCP, where there's not a whole lot they can do on the margin. Dallas will be able to actually do some stuff, and we know that their GM has done a pretty good job of putting the team together.
Yeah.
But obviously, right now, the main focus is the Celtics, right? Because they're the team that won the title. Obviously, they had to go through a lot to get to this point, right? Because They've been to the playoffs pretty much every year, right? Except for, they've been to the conference finals, right? Pretty much every year, except for like maybe 1 or 2 seasons, I think, right? I think one of those years, I think it was Jalen Brown that was hurt. Um, but either way, right? You know, they had to go through a lot to get to this point. They've had a lot of battles. But now at this point, now this is the best team that they've had in the Tatum and Brown era.
Hmm.
Um, considering the talent around them. So, it's a pretty cool thing, right? Because obviously, again, it's not very easy to go to the finals and win it in your first year. We saw that with the Celtics before, where they played Golden State. A lot of people thought they could win it, but then they didn't, right? Because Steph was the best player on the floor, through the series, and the Celtics had a chance, but they weren't able to close it. But they were able to kind of put those, can they close these tight games to bed, right? Because they were able to do that for pretty much the entire postseason, right?
Right.
They had a lot of close games against Indiana, which was really the team that kind of put the most pressure on them, you know, even more so than Dallas. And they were able to win those games, right? And then obviously you had a couple of games here that were close, and they were able to pull those out as well. And that's a big part of being able to win a title because you have to win those close games when you get those opportunities because you're not going to blow a team out every game. Like this game was a blowout, but not every game that the Celtics played this postseason, was like a double-digit victory that they just could kind of cruise from start to finish. So obviously it was a learning process because pretty much everybody got better this year, right? Their stars got better, the roster got better, the coaching got better. Let's see Mickey Mouse ring. I'll
I
let you
don't ag-
handle this one.
I
I'll
don't
stop
agree,
talking.
bro. I mean, it's just gonna be me pretty much talking about like the entire pathway. Like, okay, cool. You can call it a Mickey Mouse ring, but even if those teams were healthy, they're probably coming out on top still. And they, like I said, they faced a healthy team in the Dallas Mavericks, albeit maybe not the best team that they could have matched up against, but they still had to contend against Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. They handled it with class. I think they made it look easy, and that's I think what people are falling into the trap of because you know if it wasn't, I don't know. I think the talent gap is just very far apart, and that's what people are falling into the trap of. Just because the talent gap is far doesn't necessarily mean it's a Mickey Mouse ring. I just think they made it look easy. That's all I really have to say about it. But I disagree.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, just go back and look at some previous finals and just look at what some of those teams kind of lucked into in order to win. Because I just mentioned those previous finals, and that's just in the last 6, 7 seasons. And then there's other ones where if you go back even further, like it's just absolutely bananas, right? Like I mean, I think there were a couple of way back in the day. I think it was might have been what was it, Lakers Pistons, not in 2004, but like way back in the 80s. And it was like I think Kareem, right? He got hurt in one of those games. Or I think one of the finals against the Sixers in '83. I think it was Worthy. He had like a broken leg. So he didn't even play. But let's see. JT is a cornball. I mean, he's a funny guy, but he is a really good player. Um, I mean, he got his first ring. So obviously
You
that's
can't
and
hate
that's
on
kind of
it,
the big
bro.
and I mean the big thing is that nobody on Boston is gonna care about the path. Because I know Embiid, I think, the other day, right, in the previous game, right, he mentioned like, yeah, the whole East was hurt, myself included.
You
And that
wouldn't have
is
made a
true.
difference, Brody. I
Yeah,
promise you.
yeah, and I'm saying like that is true, but at the end of the day, I guess it's just like it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
Nobody was contending with Boston, and that's why we thought that they were the clear-cut people to come out of the East. Like that was the only option. Yes, Milwaukee could have been second if fully healthy or whatever, but even then I had them on the fraud watch from pretty much like day 1 of the NBA season, and it's like, I don't know. I don't agree with JT being a cornball. I think he's a great stand-up guy, God-fearing man, all that stuff. He could be the face he could be the face of the NBA, I feel like, I don't know why we're laughing, but I feel like he
Oh,
he
no,
he could be one of those guys.
no,
It's
I'm
just
not. You,
people
I,
hate on him
I was,
because he's a Celtic, bro. Like I think if he was on any other team, you'd be worshiping him, like you would any other NBA player that goes to the finals this young and wins this young. And you have to tip your hat to him because he found success. He went to the finals previously, lost. He came up extremely short. And then in an elimination game, he shows up big time. And, you have to give him his credit where it's due.
no, and I wasn't laughing at. what you were saying. It was just the whole situation in general is just fun.
Yeah,
Like, but either way, yeah, like obviously, again, as a Laker fan, hate the Celtics, right? But I still have to give them credit for being able to put together a really good team and taking advantage of the opportunities that they had. Because
sure.
obviously, there is a scenario where they could have lost. And then obviously, if they lose, then we're all going to be clowning them because it's like, wow, you had all this talent, you had an easy path, and you still lost. But essentially, they did what they were supposed to do. So it's like there's not really a whole lot I can really, say from a negative standpoint, even though, yeah, like as a Laker fan, it hurts. But let's see, Keith Wells, Udoka crying in his drink. Yeah, that's the wild part because, you know, self-inflicted wound, right? Where he does, what he did, and then the Celtics get rid of him, bring in Joe Mazzulla, and then that guy ends up, being the head coach for the team that wins the title, right? So I mean, so
Yeah,
essentially, like Udoka now, what kind of credit is he necessarily going to get at this point? Pretty much none.
none, bro.
So it's kind of like I guess say Mark Jackson before Steve Kerr, right? Because Mark
100%.
Jackson he coached Golden State. They got better every year under Mark Jackson. And then he got fired. Then they brought in Steve Kerr, and then they ended up winning the title, right?
Right.
So, and obviously, Mark Jackson is he going to get a lot of credit for kind of being there during the formative years of Steph and Clay?
No,
Nope.
he
So,
never will, bro. And he'll probably never get another coaching job. Udoka's lucky
nope.
he got another one, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think with Udoka, like because he, showed during that finals run that he was a really good coach, he was always going to get another opportunity. Because just as long as the thing wasn't, let's see, JT going in. Yeah, I wasn't the one saying he wasn't, so don't look at me.
The reason I
But
laughed was because Chris was laughing. That's why I was like, I don't know why we're laughing, but when he laughs, I pretty much laugh. But no,
yeah, I
like
mean,
I can try and say it again with a straight face. Maybe it was my
no,
delivery, maybe it was my tone, but I
yeah,
don't think he's corny. I think he's a good guy. That's all I'm trying to say. Great player. Good guy, great player. Um,
yeah,
you know,
man.
and it does kind of pain me to say this because, like you talked about, you're a Laker fan and you don't want to see the Celtics win ever. And it's like I'm a
No,
Wizards fan, and like we always kind of hate whoever's at the top of the East. And we were talking about that before we fired up the stream. But like, a lot of people are not very enthusiastic that the boys in green won this one. And I think the only people that probably are enthusiastic are either
goons
Tatum
and
fans
the
or
goons in green.
yeah, the goons in green. It's either, Celtics fans or Jason Tatum fans, kind of either or. But I feel
Mark,
like there's so many storylines, like
yeah, Mark
revolving
Jackson
around
part
this. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
but
Mark
go on with
Jackson part
the
two.
storylines.
But like, yeah,
Yeah,
there's
but go
so
on.
many storylines because like you look at Drew Holiday, and they were talking about it during the broadcast. Like he was the missing piece in Milwaukee, and now he was the missing piece for Boston. So I think that kind of raises his value
Yeah.
up for sure.
Um, and I
What's
was
up?
gonna say, when they first made those two trades, the one that I honestly, to be fair, like the one that I was higher on was actually the Holiday one. Even though I thought Porzingis, was good. You remember when we talked about it, right? Like you
Yes.
were higher on the Porzingis deal than I was. Not that I disliked it, but when they made that plus Holiday, then I was like, okay, now they're cooking up something. Because
Yeah.
I wouldn't have liked it if it was just Porzingis, especially if he didn't play, for most of the postseason like he
Sure.
ended up doing. So, that's where with Holiday, like you do have to give him a ton of credit because he was a big part of this team, pretty much sacrificed, right? Had to kind of adjust his way of playing, right? Because in Milwaukee, he was basically their point guard, right? Whereas here, he's kind of doing what he's kind of born to do, right? Kind of like just a straight defensive menace, that has some offensive capabilities, playmaking, and spot up shooting. He's not really like running their offense, like he was in Milwaukee, which
Right.
this is a much better role for
It's
him.
awesome.
Um, because then you don't have the random possessions where it's like Holiday's bringing up the ball and then he's just taking like these weirdo step back threes. Not that you
Right.
don't see it in Boston. It's just different
Sure.
compared to like in Boston, like everybody's kind of able to do something, with the ball. And that's the tough part that makes them hard to guard is because, when they usually have five guys out there that can all pass, shoot, and dribble. Kind of like what we talked about with Oklahoma City, right? Which can make them tough. But obviously with Boston, this is closer to a final form, of that one, right? Because their guys are in a later stage of development. But just kind of funny. And then, like you said, you go on, obviously Tatum and Brown, their first ring. Do they kind of possibly take the throne as the best duo in the NBA,
Hmm.
right? Because they've had a lot of consistent success in the postseason. Now they have the title, right? Because before most people would have said Jokic and Murray, but is it Tatum and Brown now? What do you think?
That's tough because I feel like they're such a good duo in the postseason. That's what I love about them. In the regular season, I think people can kind of say that they're maybe a little underwhelming, but like cumulatively, I think they're awesome. I don't know if they're the best though, because we'd kind of have to look at all the duos. I think we'd have to like compile a list. What are the notable ones? Like, what are
We got
duos that kind of like come to mind first?
okay, so obviously we got Luca and Kyrie. We
Okay,
got Jokic and Murray.
okay,
We got we got LeBron and AD.
okay,
We got Tatum and Brown. I see
okay.
more Mickey than the bubble ring. Oh my goodness. Um, that's funny.
That's taking a
Um,
shot at you guys.
yeah.
That's funny.
Welcome back, Sander Cade. We really, we
Yeah, it's
really
been a
appreciate
while,
your
buddy.
yeah, we really appreciate your contributions. We always love having you.
Yeah.
Um, what are the other duos? Did I meant leave any out? I guess Embiid and Maxi now.
Yeah.
Philly,
Kawhi, Paul George,
Kawhi, Paul George.
maybe.
Yeah, I guess Booker and Durant.
Okay. Halliburton, Siakam.
Edwards Edwards and Towns.
Oh,
Like, I
joy.
mean,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, going off this list, they're top two. I
yeah,
think they're top two.
yeah.
The question
I think
is,
they
do you want to put them number one or two? Because I feel like Jokic is probably better than both of them combined, if you want me to be
yeah.
honest. But
But
that's
but
kind of what
Tatum and
sets
Brown
them apart.
both but Tatum and Brown are both a lot better than Jamal Murray.
Exactly. That's the hard part. So I feel like it might be a tie. Um,
Yeah. I
for
think
sure,
it's
best duo in the East, obviously.
but I think the difference is Brown and Tatum are also a much better defensive duo.
Oh,
But then
100%.
but then at the same time, like, I don't think they're quite as good on offense
Right.
as a duo. And, yeah, but it also kinda depends on the talent around them. It's close, but I guess I don't know. Like you said, maybe you could just say Jokic because he's that good, just
Yeah.
edges, the duo out of Tatum and
Right.
Brown, but it's those 2.
Because
Like,
there's
you know what I
even
mean? Like,
yeah, like there's sometimes
it's
like
those
even in this game, there were times where I don't want to start anything or hop on any waves, but I don't know if this is just me. Sometimes it feels like Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum are kind of competing against each other. I don't know. To
I think
me,
it's just 'cause of the one-on-one play, I think is
right?
what it
Okay,
happens. They don't really because say, like, with Jokic and Murray, they do, like, a lot of plays together where it's, like,
togetherness.
pick and
Yeah,
roll, dribble handoffs.
right.
Tatum and Brown, most of their games are, one-on-one or pick and roll. It's not necessarily like, oh, Jalen Brown sets screens for Jason Tatum or like they do dribble hand. Like that's not what they do.
Right.
So I think Jokic and Murray, maybe that could be what edges it out is that they play off of each other better than some other duos, right? Because
Sure.
like with Luca and Kyrie, like they're kind of also your turn, my turn. They don't really run plays with each other. Like sometimes it could be like they set each other up for spot up threes or something like that. But that's pretty much you know, the peak of it,
Yeah,
right?
because I feel like that would
Um,
be like too much defensive attention. But even on like the fast breaks with JT and JB, like sometimes you're like throw the lob, and then one of them kind of just goes downhill, and it's like, all right,
right.
cool.
Let's see. JT, JB, Keith Wells says LBJ Davis top two. I guess the issue
That's
with the
fair.
LeBron Davis one is like it's not even really their fault. It's just I guess like that one may be a little bit more historical,
I'm
more
not
so
mad at
like
it though. I think
right.
you
But
can
I
make a
think
case though, because AD is
right.
awesome on both ends of the floor, and what LeBron's able to do, I think offensively
Yeah.
with his
I
output is
think I think
awesome.
the difference is I feel like LeBron and AD in the postseason probably could edge out some of the other duos, but maybe not necessarily in the regular season,
Yeah, it's probably
right?
just due to
That,
age because of LeBron's
yeah,
age, and the
right.
roster
Like
that's
that,
built around them necessarily isn't the doesn't
right. That's
yeah
probably the difference is that if they're in the postseason, they could probably be better than several of the other duos we mentioned in a
yeah
7 game series, but maybe not necessarily over the course of 82 games.
yeah. I feel like I
So
feel like LBJ and AD are probably like what I feel like they might be third for me.
okay. So
Yeah,
then first, so you have Jokic Murray first, then
yeah,
you have Tatum Brown second,
yeah,
and then LeBron 83rd.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's like
Where does
it's not like a crazy gap at all though. Like it's really close, especially
okay.
between the
And
top
then
two.
where would you have like Luca, Kyrie, Booker, Durant? Like where would those two be?
Um, I feel like with the Luka and Kyrie offensively, I feel like they have the potential to be the best. Um, but
But
overall, I think the defense kind of puts an anchor on what they can do. It's kind of like a damper. Like it just doesn't
right.
feel like I can trust them defensively at all, either one of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Best backcourt ever?
Yeah, I remember people were talking about that. They were like best backcourt of all time, all that stuff. But I think they were probably the best backcourt in the NBA
I'm
for
I'm
sure.
I'm joking, by the way. I'm joking,
Yeah,
by the
I
way. I'm
mean
not.
maybe best backcourt in the NBA right now. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Best offensive backcourt in the NBA if we want to marginalize it even more because you can't talk about their defense and that's why the final
Nope.
part of the reason why the finals ended the way that they did because they
Yeah,
couldn't stop anybody and they got targeted, both of them.
right. And it's like, if you're Boston, that's what you're supposed to do, right? Because
Yeah,
this isn't necessarily a novel concept where we've seen, because we've seen that in the past where teams will go after, the other team's weakest defensive players. And sometimes it's not even that that person is a bad defender. It's just of the guys you want to attack. Like you'd rather attack that person.
yeah,
Like let's say if it's like Golden State, like Steph's not a bad defender, but like you'd rather attack him on defense than like Draymond or Andrew Wiggins or somebody like that.
sure, force a
Uh,
switch.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of how it is. But I guess
Booker and
another thing you
Durant though, I'm not very high on them anymore, I don't
yeah,
think.
I think the issue is that they would need more success.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because what dang near the same sample size as what Kyrie and Luca, but just
Yeah,
very
but
minimal success.
one's
Very.
gone to a finals, and then the other one's only won
See,
one playoff
see,
series.
that's why I'm not high on them. I like them in the
Right,
regular season. I think they've taken some steps in the right direction where it's like, okay, KD may not be, as mobile as he used to be, but he's still an
hmm
awesome shooter and he can still do a bunch of other things. And he's taken a leap defensively, which is pretty interesting. And
yeah.
then
So
Booker has gotten better,
yeah,
playmaking and getting more comfortable at the point guard. Probably shouldn't be in that position anyway, but he's able to adapt. But I just don't rank them that high because they haven't done jack.
right. So then Al Horford wins his first title.
Yeah, that's
I
another one.
think they showed what was it? He had the second most playoff games without a title, right? I
Yeah,
think Karl Malone was first.
yeah,
Obviously, his career's done, so that's not happening. But Al Horford, right? He broke the curse.
yeah.
So
And it's funny
yeah,
because when I was watching the game, because I was streaming with my friends, and it was funny. Like the Jason Tatum, he had a valid point. Like he was like, "Yeah, Al Horford's one of my favorite teammates, but he doesn't have a lot of time left in the game." And he's right,
right.
in terms of his age and stuff like that. Like he's pushing retirement. So awesome for
Bob,
him to get his first ring.
Bob Cousy said that too. I think he literally said, "I'm 95. I got one foot in the grave."
Yeah,
Um, so he kind
he
of was
said
just
he's in
like, "Yes,
overtime.
yep, yeah." So he's like, "Win this one for me," and they did.
Yeah,
Um,
and
so
like
I
the
guess
Bill Walton passing probably added a lot of motivation as well.
let's see. Jamal Murray never made All NBA.
Good point. That's a good point.
And that's where like when you talk about like Tatum and Brown, both of those guys are all NBA players.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where they might be able
Hmm.
to edge it out.
They might be number
You know,
one. The more and more you think about it, huh?
so
Hmm.
um,
That's interesting.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Because I think the thing is that like I think when you say it's Jokic and Murray, it would
Hmm.
be more so Jokic than because
That's
of
what I was
Jamal.
saying. Like
And it's not
Jokic
even that
clears
Jamal
them.
Murray's bad, but it's like what Keith well said. He's not in the same tier as some of the other guys, and he's not even bad. He's just not. He's not Jalen Brown. He's not
Right.
Jason Tatum.
Right.
Um, he's not LeBron or AD. So,
Yeah.
he's not in the same tier as the other guys in the other duos, right? Like
Sure.
Kyrie Irving, I would say is better than Jamal Murray.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like that's not a hot take,
No.
even
But
though he didn't have a good series.
yeah.
Um, so I guess we already talked about it from the Boston perspective, right? 18th title, most in NBA history, right?
Hmm.
Obviously,
Hmm.
on the heels of their postseason, right, where they went 64 and 18 in the regular season, and then went 16 and 3 in the postseason. So they won 80 games, and went 80 and 21.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty much that's a pretty great run. I guess we'll extend this question to the chat, and I'm going to assume I feel like I know the answer but I just want to kind of throw it out there. Um, do we think that this Celtics team is an all-time great team? So,
Yeah.
I will ask you first,
Yeah. They
and then
are.
we will send it to the chat.
They are. We've talked about it already, kind of, previously when we thought that the series was going to be wrapped up prior to this, but statistically, I think you look at them, they were what like second in offense or something like that, and at one point, top in defense. So, they're awesome. Historically, what they're able to do, you look at their duo. Look at the starting five. Porzingis being healthy, I think that's five all stars. It's a super team. No matter how you look at it, I think in terms of your starting five, they're awesome. You have Pritchard coming off the bench. I think when you have a guy that can be brought into the game literally to only hit like shots that are 53 feet beyond the arc, like that tells you that the team is somewhat special. Um, you also have Hauser, who's been great on defense at times, and then also we know that he can shoot threes. Al Horford doing a bunch, on and off the ball defensively as well. And also, Missoula and the system that they run as well. I think it's something not necessarily that we haven't seen before, but I don't think we've seen it executed like this, where people run five out, the ball movement, the swings, all that stuff. Yeah, I think they're an all-time team for sure. You can't really erase this part of history, I think, because the game is getting better. And the guys are getting better too. And you see the efficiency. They hit three balls at an efficient rate. I think they're what? They only lost one game. I think they're 40-1 or something like that when they shoot 40% from the 3-point line. So if they're shooting 40% from the 3-point line, watch out. Like they're going to win the game. But that's because of the no. All right, nice.
Yeah, that's what
Nice.
I knew what the chat was gonna say, and I know that there are others, right? Because obviously, we were going through some good conversations. So
Yeah.
just asking,
I mean, that's just me
just
personally. I might be
so
glazing, whatever the case may be,
okay,
but
so we have another response from Xander Cade.
yeah, I don't
No,
know.
and he
I
has
don't know.
cap.
All
So pretty
right,
much everybody has
three of them. All right,
three.
cool. Do you think it's an
Yeah.
all-time team? And
Oh
chat
man.
also, if you're saying no, explain why. Can they do it again next season? Welcome Eric Nelson. The Boston
Welcome.
Celtics potentially. I think they could
Mhm.
potentially do it. It depends on who their
And
opponent in the West is. That's all I would say.
yeah, so man, I don't know. I guess it's hard to say. Like, I think for me personally, like if I were to say no, it would mainly be more so just because like when you compare, maybe like previous title runs, right? How many all-time great teams that won a title would generally have somebody where it's like, your best player is say, like a Jason Tatum. You know what I mean?
Okay. I mean, like,
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. Like, because
right,
Jason Tatum isn't regarded generally,
right.
the consensus is not, he's not a top five player. Warriors, Lakers, Bulls, Spurs, better. Sure. And
Oh,
it's like,
yeah,
I think those are like dynasties, though.
yeah.
They've all had,
And I think that's what
dynasties.
And I think that's what Spurs, though, I don't know if I feel like people have ever regarded like any of the Spurs title teams as like all-time team.
I would. Me personally, I
Which
do.
one?
Pretty
Which one?
much all of them, really. Like,
Okay.
all the ones with Duncan on them. That's what I would say.
Mhm. Okay, so then
They had a cakewalk,
Warriors
in
up.
my opinion. I think they fold under pressure. Hmm, that's
Okay.
interesting. Wow, that's very interesting that everybody is kind of sharing that same sentiment.
Mhm.
So,
And I
Eric
think
Nelson, do you think that if any of the teams that they faced prior to the Mavs, if any of those teams were fully healthy, no injuries, nothing, you think they lose any one of those series? And if so, please let me know which one. I'm just curious.
but and I think in terms of the folding under pressure, I think where that comes from is I think when you've seen a team do the type of thing, I guess, over and over again. I guess like it oftentimes kind of becomes like the identity where it's
Sure.
like it becomes very hard to shake it. Because we've seen that say like because we talked about it, say with guys like Steph and LeBron, where it's like there's a lot of people that say that those guys are not, clutch players. But
Even
then
when they
it's
are.
like, well, yeah, but they are. And it's like you don't win multiple championships without showing up in a number of big time, situations. Like obviously they've had some bad moments as well, right? For sure. But pretty much everybody at some point has had a bad moment. So I
Kobe
think,
had them. Tatum
yeah.
has them.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
And I
know.
think that's
Like, we know.
right. And I think that's where that comes from, where it's like for a lot of people, like once you see something happen, it's very difficult to shake, certain things from your mind. Like say like now with Luca, now he's in the tier of players now where it's like, welcome to the club of, now that we've seen what you're able to do, now we're really gonna start critiquing you in ways that we didn't before. Let's see, Miami Heat Network INV like invalid.
I think he means invite.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Uh
just join the Discord. We'll drag you in if you want to hop in.
yeah. But either way, that's what I'm thinking from that perspective. It's just like, now he's in that tier, Luca, where now people are going to critique him more so than they did before because of, the fact that now he went to the finals. Because this happened again. Talked about it before with other stuff, right? Giannis. right?
Hold
He
up.
had his run post. He had his runs in the what?
He said on paper the Celtics are better than the Heat, but healthy Heat can beat them in a series. It's happened. Well, this Celtics team is completely different, buddy. Like, and I'm not trying to diminish anything that you're saying at all or anything like that. They have 5 All-Stars. They have Drew Holiday, and now they have Kristaps Porzingis. Drew Holiday clears Marcus Smart, and Porzingis clears Robert Williams. So we gotta set that record straight first of all. That's just me personally. I just think you can't compare the Celtics team from last year to the one from this year because it's a completely different identity.
Right. But yeah, but like I was saying,
All
just
right, we'll drag
I
you in a
think
second. Let me just figure this out.
yeah, I think I just got to do that. But anyways, um, just with those other stars in general, like now Luca's in that, where it's like now we're gonna critique you more so than we did in the past until you get that chip. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah,
so guys had to go through that. Obviously, Tatum, same thing. Ron had to go through it. All these other stars, Jokic, same thing.
yeah.
Now the
What's up,
LeBron
Trent?
Heat team.
Yo, what up? What up? What up? Yo, is
So,
Wells low for you or just me?
Um,
uh,
I mean, his mic has been quiet like for the past couple days, so
yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Cool, cool. What's going on with you guys, man?
We're
We're
chilling,
good. We're
Brody.
just talking. Yeah, we're just talking some basketball.
Thinking,
Is
bro.
this Celtics
Bro.
team an all-time team, like an all-time great team? And most of the people in the chat are saying no. So, if you want to throw your thoughts in there,
Yeah. Do you
in
think
terms
this?
of what
Do
you
you think
think.
this Celtics team is an all-time team, Trent?
Nah,
No.
absolutely not.
Wow, that's
All right.
crazy. That's everybody's saying that. Why?
Are you
Why?
pretty much the only one, Yarby,
Yeah,
that
I'm the only one
thinks
who thinks
that
it's an
they're
all-time team, and it's just because of
Wait,
what
wait,
they've
wait.
been
okay?
historically been able to do in terms of their stats, bro. Like efficiency and the
I,
numbers and the starting
I
five. It's a starting five of all stars. Let's be serious, bro.
yeah. My guess is I think where it comes from. I feel like what most people think is that I think, like you said, the stats, and the analytics and everything, I think is where, like, you look at it because we talked about it, right? 80 and 21 over the course of the season, including the playoffs, most efficient offense in NBA history. I guess where people like differ, I think, like I said, is what we talked about in terms of like the best player thing. And also, I guess maybe some people probably feel like the eye test, like when they watch them, because I guess it's like, when you compare them to like when we watched the Durant Warriors, or some
Yeah,
of the other teams, it didn't feel the same as this. But at the same time, they only lost 3 games in the postseason, and then that has not happened very many times
and they handled the
in recent memory,
Mavs
right?
like swiftly, bro. It wasn't like this was a very competitive series.
So,
Yeah, I will say, right? It's not speaking on my end, but just
Mhm.
in general of what's going on, everybody's saying Celtic. This championship doesn't count, which I don't believe they deserve
No,
it.
right,
Just because of the fact that what they went through the first couple rounds, which is not their fault at the end of the day.
right.
Um, and you could talk about injuries. I mean, Boston was missing Porzingis ever since the first round. So like this injury BS excuse is just like it's life. It happens on every single year.
right.
Every single season is injuries. I mean, if we're gonna like we could talk about the Clippers. I mean, what if the Clippers were healthy? Maybe they won a championship, but it's always ifs. The Celtics
Hmm.
got the job done. I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm a Heat fan. We don't like
Right,
them, but I'm gonna respect them.
Right.
right.
You know.
That's yeah,
So it's
Yeah.
just
that's
like
valid.
Yep.
give give them their respect. Shout out to Porzingis for even trying to be out there.
Sure.
Um, and I mean, listen, I tell you this though, Luca in that final game, I love Luca, and I'm gonna get on Kyrie's bottom too real quick,
Yeah.
but Luca looked like he didn't even want to play.
Right.
Yeah. The energy
Yeah. They
You
wasn't
no.
know,
there.
They no
yeah,
showed.
it was a no show. His body language, I could see it on the TV, so I can imagine his teammates seeing it on the court.
Yeah.
And for Kyrie Irving, I never want to hear he's a superstar again in my life. I
Oh wow.
promise you, I never want to hear that again.
Wow.
You did a no show for 3 games in Boston. I don't want to hear all Boston fans or rattling me. You're supposed to be a superstar. You won a championship. You're a Hall of Fame point guard. You did not do your part in helping Luca at all. And that was Luca's worst game. Like, I wouldn't say worst game, but it's definitely going to be up there. But Kyrie Irving was a disaster in these finals. So I don't want to hear nothing. He didn't have his daddy LeBron, and look what happened.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's fair. Like Luca
yeah,
played
Celt-
nonchalant, and you could clearly see Kyrie was just not on at all, like in any way, shape, or form. Definitely not
yeah,
defensively. Definitely not offensively.
right. And the Celtics, they took those guys' weaknesses and used it against them, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously, they're not great defenders, but also you can get away, I guess, sometimes with that if you're scoring. And say with Kyrie, the Celtics shut him down. And like you said, I don't think it was the I don't buy that like he was getting rattled by the Celtics stuff. Obviously, like that can bother people, but I think the bigger reason is like I think the way the Celtics defended him, was probably too much for him, right?
Yeah.
Because
A
I
lot of
don't
ball
know if he's
pressure, bro.
necessarily, yeah, he hasn't faced, a defensive team like that, but also like he had a bad series, right? Because like we've seen him hit some of those tough type of shots, in previous series, right? Obviously, and it's not like he hasn't played against great defenses in the past. He had a bad series, and obviously, like when he has a bad series, then that makes it very difficult for the Mavs to win, especially like if Luka's also not going to be at his best either.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I
Yeah,
mean, like, because he shrunk on the biggest stage. That's the problem. Like, if he was shrunk in another round, all right, we can let it slide. But it's hard to kind of move on from this in a peaceful way if Bro didn't show up at all in the finals. He only showed up in a game where they had their back up against the wall, and they were
Yeah,
kind of needed to win that one.
he and Luca needed to be great, if they were going to be able to upset, the Celtics team.
Yeah, and
And
they weren't that.
Kyrie was not great in this series.
Mm-mm.
and
Just
and another thing is too, it's like, okay, cool. He hasn't gone against his ball pressure Holiday, but this is what makes you great. This is what makes you a legend in this game,
right.
Mm-hmm.
going
Yep.
against all that stuff. I mean, look at
Yes.
LeBron James. I know no one's ever going to be LeBron James, but the odds he went against, everything he goes against, man, he comes out victorious. I mean, even this the series lead when he was down 3-1 and came back, like I'm
Right.
not comparing them together, but I'm just showing you like Kyrie Irving's going to go down as a great point guard in history. But I mean, and I brought this up to you last time. What
Mm-hmm.
has he done since he left LeBron?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Eh,
Superstars.
he's
Yeah.
a
To be fair,
star, but he's
superstars
not a
don't.
superstar.
No, nah, he's no star. He's no superstar no more. I definitely think he's a star. I think
Yeah.
he's always
A
been.
bad difference than being shut down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a star, bro.
but
Not a superstar though, because he's got to be
let
good
me
on both ends of the floor. He's got to do a lot more. I feel like. But what's up, Trent?
yeah, let me ask y'all a question, right? Because
Yeah.
now it's off season time,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It's off season, and what does like I asked y'all this before, but now it's time. Like, what
Mhm.
do they do? What do they do? Because like I keep saying, oh, they're a young team, they'll be back, but like you can't just say they'll be back. You know how hard it is to get to the finals.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing for Dallas. I'm not like because the thing is, I guess they have more flexibility than some of the other Western Conference teams because they're not way into that second apron like I think what is it, Denver,
Mhm.
Minnesota, Phoenix are. But because of the players that they have, like I don't think they're going to be able to move some of those guys for another quote unquote star. It's probably going to have to be another move on the margins where it's like you're moving Tim Hardaway Jr. By moving him, you could probably re-sign Derek Jones Jr. for whatever you need. Maybe you might have, a little bit left over to bring in somebody. I don't know what you do with Max Kleba. And after that, I guess you hope for Josh Green, Derek Lively to get better. I don't know what their ceilings are as players, but I don't know. I think it's going to be really difficult for the Mavs to get to the finals next season. I mean, obviously, I guess I know during the regular season they didn't have a lot of great luck in terms of health. So maybe like if they just have a healthier season, they just win more games, but it's still going to be tough because there's going to be other teams in the West that will also be better, right? Like, I mean, the Nuggets aren't going anywhere. Maybe they're not better, but they're still really good, right? Minnesota will probably, at worst be, about the same as they were this year. OKC, if they do something, they could get better, and then some of the teams below could be better. So I don't know. I don't know
Memphis, don't
specifically
forget
what the East.
Memphis. Don't forget
Yeah, Memphis for
Yeah,
Memphis.
sure.
Memphis too.
And it's like I feel like they're gonna need to move on from some of the dead weight. Like you can clearly tell Tim Hardaway Jr. is gone. Um, just certain guys on the team that just aren't playing and aren't giving you meaningful minutes. You need another guy. I think you need another creator, somebody out there, but also somebody who's not gonna hurt you on the defensive end because you already
And
kind of have two holes on the defense, which is Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. They may not be like the worst defenders of all time, but when they're going up against a team like the Celtics, where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and other guys are kind of attacking and hunting that switch, you can't really
Mhm.
run from that.
Right, yeah, and Yeah, I agree with that, pretty much because but that's the tough part. I don't know what the obvious move out there,
There
is, and
isn't an
it's wild
obvious
because
one.
I saw the Mavs in Washington, when they played the Wizards,
Mhm.
like Hardaway, Kyrie didn't play. Hardaway started, and he was playing a lot earlier in the year, but and I know he had some injuries or whatever, but now, like you said, he's kind of at the point now where like the Mavs roster is at a level where probably is not going to help you as much anymore. I mean, ideally, if he could come off the bench and just be a microwave guy, that's something that you would like to have off the bench. But, if he can't do that, then you might
Gotta
have to
stretch
move him.
big, bro.
Right. Yeah.
See,
Unless
even not to cut you off, I'm sorry.
no, you good.
So even with Daniel Gafford, right?
Mhm.
And I think it was a great regular season addition.
Yeah.
Um, in the playoffs, you could tell if you watch the game, if you know the sport, he his minutes went down and down and down and down and
Mhm.
down,
Yep.
and Lively took over. But
Right.
do you think Lively comes in next year as a starter and Gafford goes to the bench? Like
Mm.
I think that has to be
Um,
the change. Or do you think
I
they
feel like
stay as
That's a
is?
good change because he can pass
yeah,
better. He can do a lot
right. I feel
more.
like yeah. I mean, when he first got to the team, he didn't even start. Because I think Lively was the starter before they even had Gafford, and then once
Yeah.
they first got Gafford, they tried bringing him off the bench, then they changed the lineup. I'm not sure because I know regular season wise, like they could do something where they just have Gafford still start. But I guess if Lively has a really good offseason where he improves, right, then you might as well start him because he's the better player, and we know a lot of the stats, like you said, suggest that when Lively's out there, he's been way better and way more impactful than Gafford. So that's probably something that would make sense. It's just I guess it just kind of depends on what Jason Kidd likes, because I mean, it seemed like he liked starting Gafford. They aren't going back next year. I'm assuming you're talking about the Mavs. And like I said, that's the tough part because I just feel like if they don't make a decent improvement, it's probably hard to kind of just say like, oh yeah, they're the obvious favorites to come back and
Yeah.
out of the West again next year. It's probably going to be somebody different, right?
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily who it's going to be, but again, like one of those other teams, like we mentioned, Denver's still very good. If they don't run into Minnesota, right? Maybe they could get back there because
Mhm.
they're still very good.
Mhm.
Minnesota, maybe if they don't run into Dallas, maybe they could do it, or maybe there's somebody else that we're not thinking of, right? Obviously, we already mentioned OKC or someone else, but I don't know if the Mavs are going to be able to do it. And it doesn't shortchange the year they had because they had a great year, right? Like they got to the finals when nobody expected them to. Um, and it's tough, to not be able to come out of this season with the chip, which because for Boston, obviously if they lost, that would suck. But you could still make a strong case that they could just come back out of the East next year and then just win it again.
Yeah. West
Um,
is too competitive.
but in the West, I don't know if you can say that about Dallas. But I think the big question would be, now going into the offseason, you're building off this roster as opposed to the roster from last year. So it might be easier to add some key pieces than, what it was in last offseason where you kind of had to wait until the deadline to make some moves. But I don't know if they're going to go back to the finals. But
I don't think they will.
they have the offensive firepower and their defense was really good as well. But the West is tough.
You need one
So
more piece though.
that's all I'll say.
If you want to
Yeah.
contend against Boston, you need one more because they've got five
Right.
guys that are capable
Yeah.
of obliterating you.
Good enough to probably come out of the West. Maybe not necessarily good enough to win the title.
No.
Yeah, and talking about the West, right? I don't think this team's a championship team, but it's kind of talking about Houston real quick.
Mhm.
They made a low key move that no one talked about because he was hurt for the rest of the year. But Steven Adams is on that team, and I know it's a low key move, but like,
Mhm.
do you think Houston gets in the playoff hunt this year or like playing?
Um,
I expect
I
them
think
to.
it, yeah, I think they'll be in a spot at worst they'll be where they were last year, where they're right there. I think if they make some more moves, maybe if they trade that pick, or if the young guys just get better, they should be at worst a playing team. Because I think we're probably going to expect one of those teams that was in the top 10 to probably fall out, right? If we want Houston to go in, and the question is which team would that be? And then obviously if Memphis comes back, somebody's going to fall out as well. But I think Houston could be in there. But I think they would need to make like, a relatively decent move. I don't necessarily know if like just on, just based off of player improvement alone they could get in, but they should be good enough. I think they have the talent to be able to get into the play.
I mean, if they trade that number 3 pick and get like
Yeah,
a win now player, or if they use that number 3 pick on like the most NBA ready, best fit kind of guy, I
right.
think you'll see a lot of potential because they have a lot of pieces. I think that are going to take a leap. I think a lot of eyes are on Jabari Smith, a lot of eyes
Yep,
obviously on Jalen Green, Shengun
yep.
also as well. Like you mentioned, Steven Adams is on
Thompson,
that team. There's a lot of players on that team, and I think cumulatively you
Thompson.
might actually like what they have going for themselves.
Yeah, Thompson, Tari Eason. Because by the end of the season they lost some key pieces.
Yeah.
So if some of those guys come back healthier and
Yeah,
better,
Cam Whitmore too.
then yeah, Whitmore
Ahmed.
as well. So yeah, exactly. So they have a lot of pieces where if those guys all get better and they have, better luck in terms of health, like they have a chance to be in that, play-in playoff hunt. It's just how good are the other teams around them going to be? But it feels like one of those older teams might drop off, and then that might be
Yeah.
enough for Houston to come in.
Yeah, I was thinking either
Warriors.
Warriors or Kings or something like that. I don't know. One of the two.
Yeah, right. Because that's the thing. I think one of those older teams. I feel like that's probably where it would make more sense for Houston to leapfrog. Because, like you said, maybe Warriors, maybe one of those other teams. I'm not sure, but it really depends.
Yeah. Oh my God,
So
Kyrie's tweeting.
Kyrie Irving's already tweeting.
Yeah, he tweeted an hour ago.
Bro, what? Oh
My
my god, bro.
Yeah,
Bro,
but
fault. I didn't mean to
you,
bring that up.
yeah, but what were you
you,
gonna say
you
that?
yeah, so it's draft time.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Y'all got a big stream coming up.
Yep.
Yep.
That's next week. Is it next week, I believe, or 2 weeks?
It's the
Um.
25th, so a week from now, I think.
Yeah. Next. Yeah, it's next week. I think.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's next week. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So once again, I want to say congratulations, Celtics.
Yeah.
Now we can all root for our teams. It's a new year. Go Miami. Go Wizards. Go Lakers. Actually, F the
Yes, sir.
Lakers. But you get what I'm trying to say. But
It's all good.
but we all got important picks, especially you Yarby.
Yep.
I believe it's
Yep.
right. Miami got a good pick, and Lakers have a good pick too, man.
Yep.
Like, is there any have y'all looked at the draft yet for like any like sleepers or any players that you want to draft for like your team?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start because I think we have the highest pick, but there's a lot because it all depends on what Atlanta does. That's the thing that's kind of unfortunate because any one of these guys could technically go number one. Could be Sar, it could be Klingon, it could be Risa Share, whatever. Um, Me personally, we're the Wizards, so I think we need to get a big man. I think, we need to either go Sar or Klingon, but if one of those guys gets taken, I would probably go Risa Share because I think what SAR is predicted number one or it's Risa Share, one or the other. I can't remember, but if one of those guys does get taken, I don't have a problem with taking Klingon as well. I just think we need to get a big man. We haven't had a good big man in a long time. I think the best big man that we've had in recent history was Porzingis, and he clearly showed you why. But yeah, I mean that's kind of how I stand with the second pick. I don't think they should trade it. Just use it on a big man.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for my team, personally, like I'm kind of in the middle on whether or not they should keep it or trade it. I mean, because it just kind of depends on what's available. If there's nothing available, then you're gonna have to take it.
Hmm.
But I guess for the purpose of this conversation, let's just assume that they use the pick. I would personally prefer either some type of wing or some type of big. I don't think we need another guard. Because I know they took what was it JHS last year. And that so far hasn't necessarily worked out. And I just think they have so many other guards on the roster. If they move Milo or somebody or Austin or somebody like that, it's going to be a guard. So I'm thinking somebody, like one of those, guys. Like I think one guy that's interesting that it seems like he's fallen in the draft is like a Holland, right? Because it seems like he's
Ron
a
Holland.
guy where like his stock has sort of dropped. I guess G League Ignite and all that. So that's somebody that I'm kind of thinking of.
He doesn't have a jumper
Uh,
too. That's the other thing. He shoots like
right, and I
20%
don't.
from the three or something.
Yeah, I don't know if Devin Carter, will be available by the time it's 17.
Maybe.
Right, maybe one of the other guys like Terrence Shannon, or somebody like that. But just somebody who's some type of wing or some type of big that is decent enough to be able to play regular season games. Like I don't really want them to draft another project because there's just really no point, in
Yeah.
my mind for, this roster, right?
Yeah.
Like if you
Understand.
move LeBron and AD in the offseason and you just traded them, okay, fine. But
Right.
if they're on the roster, you might as well take somebody that's at least somewhat ready to play. So if
Right.
they can, defend, if they're a decent athlete, and can kind of shoot if they're a wing, and then obviously if they're big, I think if they can run the floor, and not just be an absolute stick in the mud, then I think that'll probably be fine.
Fair.
Yeah, I will. So I was like, as a dream option for me at least, it would be Topic. Because
You like
he could be our
Topich?
Topage. Yep. Yeah,
Oh
Topage.
God, I don't like that
Yeah,
guy at all, bro.
really, really.
No,
So,
I'm
but
low on him.
okay, cool. So it's a dream option, right? Because I
Sure.
don't think he's gonna fall down. But Rob Dillingham too. Like he's there's reports he's falling out the top 10.
Hmm.
I mean, he's 6'1". He that kind of struggles. That nerves me a little bit. But there's a lot of guys that we can go with at this 15th pick because I think a lot of people, our teams, I would say, they're gonna either reach or they're gonna like miss out on a player. Like I think this is what this draft is gonna be. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like
Yeah.
Tyler Kolek. So there's some few people on this team that players that I want on the Miami Heat, but there's not going to be like a win now player. I don't think, and I don't even think even with the top pick is going to be a win now player
Right.
in this year's draft. But
Yeah.
for a good role player, Tristan Da Silva is pretty solid. I like Kel'el Ware. So looking at those type players, hopefully we can get a guard or a center because I think that's
Yeah.
what we need. Like Terry's not the future, and Bam needs size with him if he's going to
Mhm.
be our future up there.
For sure,
So
bro.
yeah, that's kind of the direction I'm going with. But I'm looking at this mock draft right now. They actually got Kel'el Ware going to the Lakers and Jared McCain to the Magic, which why the hell do they have McCain going to the Magic when they have 50 damn guards over
Yeah,
there?
that makes no sense.
Yeah,
And
and if
they're
they,
rumored to sign Clay.
or
Like,
Malik Monk.
Yeah,
like,
that makes no sense.
you didn't even play your player you drafted a year ago, Anthony Black.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They have too many
they don't need
guards, and they
enough.
all do different things. It's the weirdest thing
Yeah,
ever. Like a year ago, we were like, okay, yeah, their guard room is strong, and then we were like, okay, and then you drafted another guard. Great.
and some of those guards are going to be gone. So
Exactly. Some of them are going to be gone. Oh, Dre said, can we all agree that Anthony Edwards is king of the NBA now? I don't know about
yeah.
that. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know about that yet.
Can be, but he's not right now.
It can be, but not right now. And then also Tatum and Brown are the new prototypes for championship teams, two-way athletic wings. And that's
100%.
something that we've been talking about for a long time is like, the importance of the wings.
Yeah.
It's just now the guards next to them are also, better than the guards that they had in previous years, right? Like
Yeah.
what did they have before? Obviously they had Kyrie,
Yeah.
first when they were younger guys, right? Or I guess Brown played with Isaiah Thomas when he was a
Yeah.
rookie, but Tatum played with Kyrie. After Kyrie, they went with Kemba Walker. And then he fell off the map, right? Because he got hurt.
Yep.
And then after that, right, then they went to Marcus Smart, and he's fine, but the guards they have are better, right? Like Derek White and Drew Holiday are just better guards than the other ones they've had, minus I guess Kyrie, but like those guys are also way better defensively while also being good offensive players, right?
Yeah,
They're
they
not
fit the
great
mold,
offensive
bro.
players, but they fit next to Tatum and Brown. So they pretty much have like the perfect roster around them, as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very well put together roster, right?
Hey,
So,
I'm hyped for this off season though.
no,
yeah.
me too, man.
But
Me too. I can't wait. You have a question?
yeah,
Oh,
but, oh no, you're good. But actually, funny enough, I believe what has been said now is that starting the day after the finals, right? Then teams will be able to negotiate with the free agents they currently have, right? So like we could potentially start seeing teams if they re-sign players or whatever. We should probably start hearing some of that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah, it is pretty cool. But as a Heat fan, it's gonna break my heart when I wake up and it says Donovan Mitchell signed a 5-year, $700 million extension. What?
Yeah, he's gonna
Yeah.
sign to Cleveland. That's I think what
Right.
everybody kind of thinks is gonna happen. But that's gonna like
Yeah.
be the first domino to fall, and then I think Cleveland's roster is gonna be completely different.
Right, because the thing is that there's been lots of stuff about like, oh, we're not trading Garland or Allen, and then there's other stuff where it's like, oh, but if Mitchell signs the extension, then Darius Garland's gonna ask for a trade,
Right.
and then even if Mitchell signs the extension, like he could sign that now and then just still ask for a trade later if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Obviously, like signing the extension takes his name off the table now,
Yeah.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that like next summer he's still a Cat. He might be, but
Yeah. You could always ask out.
right. So, we'll see. But obviously, yeah, it's been a wild NBA season, right? But
That was
at the end of the
awesome.
day, the team with the best record did win the title, which actually, funny enough, hasn't happened in a little bit, right? Because like the Nuggets didn't have the best record in the NBA. Warriors didn't before that, right? I don't think the Bucks did either. Neither did the Lakers. And then the Raptors did not either, right? Or the
Hmm.
Warriors. I think the second one with KD. The last time I think it was the Warriors with Durant the first year. I think that
Okay.
was the last time that a team that had the best record in the NBA win the title.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. What a season, though.
Yeah, now
Um,
what a season. It just
so
said I just seen this thing on Twitter. So the Celtics are headed to Miami for a few days to party.
yeah, I mean they've earned it.
Yeah, for sure, bro.
And I guess like just to kind of like throw this out, maybe this is the last question, of the
Sure.
stream, possibly depending on how you feel. But where does this finals rank in terms of like obviously we're not going to look at the last 70 something NBA finals, but let's say like since I don't know like 2020, 2019 or whatever, right? Eric Nelson says I feel like Heat are going to pay Butler.
They
Um,
probably will, even though they shouldn't.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know because again, like if he stays, right? Like if he doesn't ask out, then they probably will.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. He would probably need to know that another team is going to be trading for him, which I'm sure the teams are interested in him. But I don't think he would just ask out like immediately. But the vibes have been kind of weird. But there's also been rumors as of late that suggest that he's probably going to stay.
Yeah.
So, but back to the previous question, yeah,
Mhm.
where does this rank? Unless Trent, you want to take on the Butler thing as since you're the Heat fan.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this a lot on my channel lately. It doesn't make sense for us to sign Jimmy
Right.
to extension. You
Yeah.
play that out. You see what he does this upcoming year.
Right.
And if he actually wants to play and try and go out there and look like a all-star, then yeah, then cool. But if you're just gonna do what you've been doing the last few years and then expect to be a playing team for the last 2 seasons and you go to the finals one and then get out in the first round and not play, then I'm good off you.
Yeah.
So
I think the Heat would be crazy to do it. Just from my perspective, but I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, like, I feel like they're a pretty well run organization, but I don't know. I think they'd be insane to do it. I just don't think it would make a lot of sense because it just feels like unless they are able to make some big moves, it almost feels like they might have maxed out, what they were able to do. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but I
The
think
Jimmy
based
era
off
is
of,
over, bro.
yeah, I feel like based off his recent track record of just not playing enough games, year in and year out, I just, a 2-year, $113 million extension just sounds crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically well over 50 million a year. And I don't know that's insane,
Yeah.
but they could do it.
Yeah. They probably will.
Um, but back to that last question. Yeah,
Mhm.
where does this finals rank to you? Let's just take because we've talked about how there's been a different title winner every year since
Mhm.
2019.
Mhm.
So let's start there, I guess. So
So
say from
since
20,
2019.
yeah. So since the
Mhm.
Raptors won all the way up to the Celtics won, where does this one rank to you?
Um, I guess lower. I would say a little
Okay.
bit lower, just because, um, I think from an entertainment perspective, it wasn't as enjoyable. But from a basketball perspective, I think it was more so a show of dominance from the Celtics, and you kind of saw that they overpowered the Mavs in pretty much every category. That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't. I'm trying to think, like going back to last year. I think I was a little bit more hyped last year,
Hmm.
considering like we kind of finally saw Jokic in a deep, deep playoff run and, getting to the finals. That was pretty cool. But at the end of the day, I kind of felt the same way about Luca, but it was more so disappointing alongside, Kyrie kind of having a deflating performance as well. But I feel like it was awesome to kind of see Jason Tatum bounce back because, I'm a Jason Tatum fan. I'm not a Celtics fan. Um, so I think
Hmm.
that was kind of like a glory moment. So I might have to rank it a little higher than last year, actually. That's what I'll do.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you where it's like I
It's still
wouldn't put
lower,
it.
though.
Yeah, I would have it lower. I don't think this is gonna go on anybody's like all-time
No.
finals list, unless you're like a Celtics fan. But I think some of the storylines were interesting. But like you said, I think it has more so to do with, like you said, if you like dominance, then this would be, your type of finals. Whereas
Sure.
if you kind of like more back and forths, this would not be one of those.
Right.
Um,
yeah, I mean, you stole the words out of my mouth, man. I agree. Like a lot of people are not excited with the Celtics winning the championship and destroying the Mavericks, but if you're just an NBA fanatic, man, that's just straight dominance. Like
Yeah.
they came out there and made Luca and Kyrie Irving, they're biatch. I can't say
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it on YouTube, but like, you know, um,
Yeah.
Boston did what they had to do. Getting eliminated to Golden State in 2021 2022. They came back. They didn't go last year, and
Yep.
they just shout out to the Boston Celtics. I will say, for ranking, um, I F the Lakers for winning the championship in 2019 and 20. Okay, that's beating my team. Let's get that right. So let's just eliminate that. The last two finals, just eliminate my team losing. Okay,
Mhm.
to Denver and to the Lakers. We don't care about those. Okay. But I love the Nuggets. Believe it or not, but outside being like biased, I love the Nuggets story, man.
Mhm.
Jokic, he's a bad motherfucker.
Yeah.
The Bucks
Yeah.
versus the Suns. I mean, that was also a good series too.
Yeah.
You know, to see Devin Booker going against Giannis, but Giannis that year was just really unstoppable. I will
Mhm.
say, I think personally, in my opinion, I think that series is more enjoyable than what I just seen.
Yeah.
Um, that's just my opinion on that. And then the Toronto Raptors series that was just kind of like Clay got hurt. That was the year Clay got hurt, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Clay
Durant.
got
No
hurt that
Durant.
year,
Yeah. And
and
KD.
yeah. So we already knew that was over, but.
Mhm.
I'm not going to complain because there was a year where we just kept seeing Golden State versus Cleveland. I felt like every single year. So,
Yes.
Yep.
you know, I'm happy that each different teams are winning, and I
Mhm.
can't wait till next season.
Yeah. The
Right. And
parity's
that
awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna ask, I guess, if we want to kind of conclude this stream. And again, if anybody else in the chat wants to, throw their, thoughts in there as well. But, because again, now we're in an era where there is a different title winner every season. So, do we prefer this or do we prefer, the previous eras where it's just, kind of these super teams where they just kind of go in and they just destroy. Maybe they have some bumps along the road where it's, more difficult. Like I think the 2018 Warriors, they swept the Cavs in the finals, but they had the crazy 7-game series against the Rockets where it was like Harden and Chris Paul, and things like that. So I guess the question is, do we like this more or do we like, the past more? Because I do know that there are a lot of people that prefer, because I've talked to people like this, where they prefer the older era of the super teams because they like to see, like you mentioned with the Celtics and Mavs, where it's like just one team going out there just destroying everybody. And they don't care, right? Who's in their path, everybody's done for. But then there's other people that prefer, this where it's, it's a different team every year, and there's a lot more teams that have a chance, even though usually still one of the best teams still ends up winning. But, but it's not as predictable going in where it's like, oh, we know who's going to be, in the finals, each year. Like you mentioned, we had 4 straight seasons of Cavs, Warriors. Yeah, part of me can't wait for the CBA to kick in. That's going to be the crazy part because that's where it's going to be really difficult for certain teams to be able to, really upgrade. Because once you've maxed out, you can't get better. You just basically have to just bank on being healthy and that certain guys just, do their part. But yeah, kind of throw your thoughts in there as well, in terms of super team versus parity.
I mean, I like the parity more. I think, having a lot of options and a lot of teams where you don't really know who's going to appear in the finals, every year. I think that's pretty cool from a enjoyment and an entertainment perspective. And I do understand, like, you're talking about people do like, the sagas where it's like, Golden State versus Cleveland or, Miami versus the Spurs. That was another one that we got to see, a couple times.
Yeah.
So, I think there is a small portion or maybe just a portion in general of the NBA fandom that really does enjoy watching those sagas. But I like to kind of have a different champ every year, or at least, a couple different faces every year. Cause I think, it's pretty cool to
Mhm.
see and it gives players the spotlight, that really do deserve it. Cause, I think there's some guys, that really can show you what they're worth because you look at, the Celtics team this year, I think this is a redemption story. This is a redemption arc. And it could have been for the Mavericks too, from Kyrie's perspective. But, if you're looking strictly at Boston, like, yeah, they sucked last year. They folded last year. That was horrible, if you're a Boston fan or whatever. And the year before that,
Mhm.
Jason Tatum shrunk in the moment. But now it's a complete flip of the switch. Now you're the most dominant team, out there in the playoffs, throughout the postseason, all the way up until the finals. So I think I like the parity a little bit more.
Yeah, like I could say this, right?
Mhm.
Tatum won his first ring. Jokic won his first ring.
Mm-hmm.
Then Curry obviously won. Then Giannis. than LeBron. Like I like to see the young players because we have so many young talented players nowadays.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Just to even get to the finals appearance is pretty cool. I mean, like shout out to Luca to even get there.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
eventually he'll
and he'll be
get
back.
one. Yeah, for sure. Next year I wouldn't mind seeing Anthony Edwards in the finals. Like I like to see these young players shea because
hmm
we just have so much talent and the older era, LeBron, Curry, Durant, like they're gonna be gone soon. So like this is what we got. Like Tatum is gonna be around for a while. Tatum Brown are gonna be. I think they're gonna retire together. Personally, in my opinion.
hmm
Um, so I like seeing different stuff. Don't get me wrong, like that was it was to a point where it was fun, but then it got to a point when it was just like boring. Like, all right, LeBron and Curry again, all right, LeBron and Curry again. And then
right.
Golden State just kept, okay, let's just make a super team now. It was just like it was just kind of lame. But I mean everybody has their own opinion, but next year, hopefully another young cat wins. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
how I feel.
Homelander says Shay mentioned. Yeah, this is a Shay. We really like Shay on this
Yeah, we
podcast.
like
We are
Shea.
not SGA. We are not SGA haters at all.
Yeah,
But I agree. I like the parody, a lot more. Just because, like you said, it gives a lot of fans who don't even watch the NBA over the course of the regular season a chance to see, guys that you wouldn't normally see, on a big stage. And I think that's, kind of the coolest part. Like you mentioned, Jokic, Tatum, Luca, and others. So I think that's where I kind of like it because, like you said, like yeah, Cavs Warriors was cool. The first couple of years. Anthony Edwards, yeah. Cavs Warriors was cool the first couple of years, and then after a while, it just kind of got ridiculous. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Where it was just like at a certain point, you're just like, all right. Especially like once it got to the point, I think once they signed Durant, then I think the year after, right? Then everybody was like, well, we saw what happened, when they first had Durant the first year. What's the difference,
yeah.
right?
That
And to be
2018
fair,
Cavs Warriors was not fun to watch.
right. But the craziest part is the conference finals. Those were, it got to a point where we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because, I think both the Cavs and the Warriors were down 3-2 in their series.
Yep.
Um, and I think that's, and there's going to be some people where it's like from the super team perspective, it's your team, so you love it, or it's not your team, so you're going to root against them no matter what, right? Like hate watching or,
Mhm.
whatever. But, now with the parity, now we have a lot of different options. So, I do like it. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Well, I mean, I think we've covered, all the bases. We talked about the NBA finals. We talked a little bit of off-season stuff, from our favorite teams and all that stuff. So yeah, we appreciate, all the support from you guys in the chat. We appreciate Keith Wells, Homelander, Xander Cade. Who else we got? Eric Nelson, Dre, and we definitely appreciate Trent and Miami Heat Network for hopping in here and helping us out with this stream for sure. And we're gonna be doing our draft stream, literally a week from now. So and that'll be, Trent will be on here as well. So once again, we appreciate everybody who stopped by for this stream, and we will see you guys on